Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ether, cash. Stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ether, cash. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ether, cash. Since I was born, been stacking my coin. These niggas pop, my money keep growing. Your girl is a dot, she all on my groin. She blowing my horn, we fuck like porn. These rappers is whack, they lyrics is corn. I'm getting this money, it never get born. Loading my strap, they calling the law. Fuck around and get clapped for running your jaw. If it ain't about the dollars and it don't make sense. Got me sipping brown water, but it ain't from Flint. Trying to chase all this bread, though the shit won't last. About to shut the city down like a crypto crash. Stacking my coin.
It's the rundown, everything you need to know. It's the rundown, everything you need for show. It's the rundown, and I ain't even capping on this. Crypto blood covering every topic on this. Welcome to the show, who didn't let me go? Breaking down the facts, there's more you need to know. Crypto politics and culture, always keep it real. Teaching you the truth, showing you how I feel. Stay informed with me, and I break it down with ease. Every single day, bringing expertise, current events and trends, I analyze with care. Knowledge is the power that we all can share. Yeah, y'all, hit that like button, share the stream, and join the team. And you already know what the fuck going on. Shout out to my nigga Crypto Block.
Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Okay. Ready?
Fucking thing sucks. We'll do it live. Okay.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We're running it back, baby. We're running it back. Watch out. Emergency rate hike. Oh, no. Can't do that, brother. Not with oil at $150. Can't do that. All right, let's go ahead and see what Jerome Powell is. Well, actually, we're going to get the rate decision. Let's see what we got going on.
And what are their views on the employment markets? Now, the bulls and the dovish members on the Fed are going to say inflation's here today, but slower economic growth is here tomorrow. We could still get 1 or 2 rate cuts into the books later this year. Markets are currently predicting only 86% chance of 1 rate cut in December 2026. Yeah. Of course, the hawks on the Fed are going to say that inflation is now here and it's chronic and we can't cut rates or maybe even raise rates sometime this year.
I don't know if we can show this in the next 5 seconds. Kalshi's odds for the next Fed hike, 60% before 2028, 37 before 27. Steve Leisman has the decision. Hi, Steve.
Unchanged. Federal Reserve leaving interest rates unchanged at a range of 3.5 to 3.75. It was an 11-1 vote with Fed Governor Steve Myron again dissenting, preferring to cut rates by 1/4 point. The Fed saying very up high in its statement today that the implications of developments robust or actually positive economic outlook. It continues to say, as it did last time, that the economy or the economic activity is moving at a solid pace. Say job gains have been low, but the unemployment rate is little changed. Now, as for the outlook, still 1 cut built in this year for the median Fed official, bringing the rates down to 3.4, and 1 cut for next year, another additional cut for next year at 3.1%. The long run, something that's been ticking up over time, the long run neutral rate is now see at 3.1. That is up 1/10. On inflation, the median Fed official now looking for 2.7 on headline inflation. That's from 2.4 in the December forecast. Going back down to 2.2% in 2027. On core, looking for 2.7, up from 2.5, so 0.2 added there. Interestingly, GDP actually taking a tick up to 2.4 from 2.3 and 2.3 from 2% in 2027. So not seeing much of a GDP hit from the higher inflation forecast that is now part of the outlook. As for the dots, 7 officials want to hold, 12 want to cut. At least 1 cut or more. 5 of those want 2 cuts or more. The old range, guys, was a funds rate from, if you take all 19, the bottom was 2.1, the top was 3.9. It's come in a little tighter. Now it's 2.6 to 3.6. So a little bit of give on the dovish side, a little bit of give on the hawkish side, and now you have a little bit more centered around this 2.6 to 3.6 area. But again, the Federal Reserve emphasizing uncertainty. Interestingly, I would point out the idea that they upped their inflation forecast, but also they upped their GDP forecast. So that's kind of telling you perhaps where the center of the board is on the ultimate impact of the oil price shock. Guys?
All right, Steve, stick around here, please, because we have markets that are relatively stable right now, maybe not unexpected. We're all waiting for the press conference. Let's get out to Chicago for the reaction in the bond markets right now. Rick Santelli has that story. Rick, Chicago, for the reaction in the bond markets right now. Rick Santelli has that story. Rick.
Yes, Dom. If we look at all the intraday moves, 2 cents dollar index, what jumps out at me right off the bat is that the fixed income markets too.
All right, we're gonna get that out of the way. I don't know what's going on with we got the glitch, the matrix glitch going on. Anyway, crazy. Yeah, so that's so crazy. Like you guys said, it's crazy to see the Kalshi being mentioned on CNBC. You know why? Because it's all a fucking betting game. The stock market is too. They've just tricked us into thinking that our retirement funds are being invested. No, they're being gambled right along with the Kalshi markets. It is what it is, guys. Hyben says here, prospectors, the Kalshi and Poly market have become the best source for public opinion. Absolutely has. And I was going to show this, but I kind of got started late. It was 100% chance there was no hike today from Poly market. So I was going to show that before the actual news came out. But prospectors, you're right, man. You're right. We're killing it over there on Bloodalytics, though, baby. We're killing it. Today's been a good day. Ice Cube went short earlier this morning at 9 o'clock. Boom, right there. Took 50% of our profits right here. Another 25 here. Then we turned around and went long here. Boom. Took 55% of our profits, 50% of our profits there, and we are locking in the rest of those, letting it ride. Ladies and gentlemen, you already know what's going on. Bloodalytics.com. Join the team, man. You guys, best kept secret in the trading game. Cancel anytime if you need to. We got yearly subscriptions with a 20% discount. Save even more, so check that out as well. Parameter packs on deck to enhance your system. Man, we making moves out here, baby. All right, so look, shout out to the Creole Traveler. He said, Bullion Blood, the devil done bombed the Iranian oil fields. Thoughts? If it's not clear to y'all yet that Israel is the devil, the Zionists that's controlling Israel, maybe not the people, but the Zionists controlling Israel and our country are the devil. They are the devil. And it's just sad that we just let them. They've got carte blanche. They can do whatever they want to do. They can initiate strikes, preemptively take us, drag us into the war, starting a war. They can say they can have nuclear bombs without being regulated or even having to admit to the international committee that they have nuclear weapons, which they're not supposed to. Because if you have nuclear weapons, then you have to abide by certain international rules, and you have to have, people come in and check them and all that type of stuff, man. They just circumvent all that. And so this is why this is bad, Creole. This is bad. They want chaos in the Middle East because they know it's basically for Israel. It's a win-win situation. If Trump and our administration, if we lose control of this Middle East conflict, Israel wins. If the U.S. and our military complex wins and crushes Iran, Israel wins. It's a win-win each and every way for the Zionists, man. So I don't know how much more we need to see that these people that control Israel. Again, I'm not going to categorize every person in Israel as evil. That would not be an accurate description of the situation. Just like I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure the Iranians don't think that every American is evil, though we're doing very evil things right now to their country, right? So I think at this juncture, it should be self-evident that Israel, the Zionists controlling that country, are actually the problem. They're bombing. I'm hearing that in Beirut, shout out to all my Lebanese out there, baby. They're bombing. They're going crazy. Worse than they did years ago when they had the war against the Middle East war, and the Beirut was getting bombed and everything. It's worse than that now. So they don't care. They bomb schools, they bomb hospitals, police stations. They do all this stuff, man, and it's like everybody's turning a blind eye. But I think we're coming to a crescendo, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll get to Fed Powell at 2:30. We'll listen to what he has to say, but we're coming to a crescendo. We're coming to a crescendo. And that crescendo is that I think the Middle East, more so the Gulf nations, are going to turn their backs on the U.S. They're going to turn their backs on the U.S. and they're going to start fighting the war with Iran. Maybe not all of them, but I think it only takes one or two to say enough is enough. We're not doing this. I mean, Iraq, I don't know, it's not really reported much, but Iraq is actually they've been helping Iran. The fuel tankers that got shot down, U.S. fuel tankers. And it's so crazy. The one black guy, the young guy that died on that plane, I've met his mother years ago, and I want to say he was with her. She smoked cigars. She was in town. They live in not Cleveland, but somewhere in Ohio. But they were here in the city. I met his mother. I don't know if he was with her or not. I can't remember, but that was so many years ago. But yes, insane. So the fueling planes were over Iraq. They weren't in Iran. Crypto Yo says, your guy needs to do something about these gas prices expeditiously. He can't, because he's controlled by Israel. He's controlled by the Zionists. He can't do anything. Israel wants the oil to get out of control. They want to sow chaos. It's you have no other excuse. Do you think there's been a dead man switch activated with rumors of BB being deleted? I'm still wondering where the hell he is. Where is BB Netanyahu? Anybody know? Where in the world is BB Netanyahu, ladies and gentlemen? That's what I want to know. Where is this guy at? Because I ain't seen him. And that's a little suspicious, to say the least. A tad bit suspicious, ladies and gentlemen. So we got the FOMC. We got a no cut, no rate hike, no rate cut, nothing, unchanged, as I knew it would be. Big GZ in the building. Pocket gate, baby. Pocket gate. There you go, anything. Pocket gate, baby. Oh, we got to pull this up, man. We got to go ahead and pull the pocket gate up one more time for them. They're putting, you know what's making it very suspicious is that they're putting out images. They put an image out of Bibi Netanyahu allegedly calling in the kill shot for Elijah, what's his name? I don't know these people, these names in Iran, man. Come on, man. The head of Intel, security, Intel, whatever. He got struck last night at his daughter's house. They kill him, his daughter, his detail. I mean, they're just brutal people. They're brutal people, man. Absolutely brutal people. S&P 500 is officially going 24/7. S&P Dow Jones indices licensed the index to trade XYZ for hyperliquid perpetual futures contracts. The benchmark now trades 24/7 on chain with no market closures for the first time in the indices 69-year history. Do you guys see this right here? Wow. That's major news. I didn't even see that. I didn't even see that. Oh, man, I can't even watch that, bro. I can't even watch that, bro. I think that's the guy that oh, man, we're not watching that. After the attack on the energy facilities, we will run the invaders' oil and gas sites into ashes. Good God Almighty. I wanted to try to find I think I bookmarked it. I wanted to find the Netanyahu pocket gate. Is this it? This is it right here, ladies and gentlemen. Pocket gate. Here it comes. Pause. Here it goes. Pocket gate. Anything for clicks. Oh! The pocket moves out. That's an intelligent, smart AI equipped pocket there. You got BB Netanyahu. Jeez Louise, man. This is insane, ladies and gentlemen. Freaking insane. Absolutely insane. Now, what I was trying to find was Netanyahu doing the flip. They had him do the flip. Oh, Lord, what? Oh, God. Not the blood of the Iranians on his hand and the Lebanese and everybody, man. Americans. Oh! Oh, man. Not the athlete's foot. Oh, God. The internet is undefeated, y'all. Absolutely undefeated. Absolutely undefeated. I want to find where he did the flip. That's what I want to see. The one they did the flip. Coffee gate. Oh, God. Internet is undefeated, y'all. Internet is undefeated. I want to see the flip. Man, that looks devilish. Yeah, man, this is sad, bro, that we've allowed a country of 9 million people, again, controlled by a small group of Zionists. We've allowed them to literally dictate the whole situation right now, the whole world. It's insane. Let me just go ahead and put the BB flip. Let's do that. Let's just go ahead and type that in and see what we come up with. We're doing the oh, here it goes. This got to be it right here. Oh no, that's not it. That's pocket gate. Yo, I want to find the one where he jumped on the counter and flipped, ladies and gentlemen, then took a sip of the coffee afterwards. No, the internet is just crazy, man. The internet is freaking crazy. I'm gonna find it. You just give me a minute. You give me a minute. I'm gonna find it. BB coffee flip. I'm going to find it. Let's see if this is it. No, that's not it. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen, as we await the 2:30 conference from our guy, Jerome Powell. He will be entering stage left in a little while. The like button is free. Please, will you please tell him, 10 pound? Please hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting a little pullback now, but we were able to lock in 50% of our gains right here on this trade, this long trade. Smooth transition from the short we initiated this morning at 9 o'clock. BB probably hanging out with Tupac and Kurt Cobain. Oh, man. That's crazy, man. I am determined to find this damn. This was the funniest one of all, bro. Like, I can't believe someone came up with this one. Oh, here it is. Times. Let's see. Oh, no, that's not it. Yes, something's going on for sure with BB, because he hasn't been seen. You know, the whole cliche, you know, I've got 5 fingers. You know, that's just you're projecting what is really going on, which is it's an AI video. BB journey. Well, man, when I find this one, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show it. It may be tomorrow, but I'm going to get that darn video I saw where he flipped off the counter and sipped his coffee, and not a drip fell out the cup. I said, I'll be damned. We out of control. We are out of control. Bloodalytics.com again powers all of our trades here on Crypto Blood. Bloodalytics YouTube channel. Join in. Use this powerful tool today. Sign up right now and get access to these wonderful tools. $79.99 a month. We got parameter packs that also enhances your and allows you to use this tool on other assets. Silver's future going crazy. We talked about the Moonalytics chart yesterday. That's going crazy. Someone said a new moon phase just happened today. So we should definitely take a look at the moon phase. Where's our moon man? Where is the moon man? Let's just do a search. Moonalytics. There we go. Ladies and gents, round of applause. Let's see what we got roasting today, baby. So this Ethereum long is still carrying from yesterday. We went double long, actually. We took 50% of our profits on this Bloodalytics trade that was initiated yesterday, or Sunday, I should say. Sunday. We went double long. We doubled up on our long on Monday, Tuesday. And now we're carrying this long way into the green, baby. Way into the green on the Bloodalytics. I don't know why that chart didn't default over. And then Bitcoin, we are initiated a long and then double long. Very similar pattern to the Ethereum trade. And we've been taking profits along the way, all the way up, ladies and gentlemen. Looking good, man. These are all tools available. This is the cheapest one we got on the site. Bloodalytics system, $25.99. If you are into Lunar, and it does work, but there are so many Lunar signals that are free. But what's different about the Bloodalytics one is that it overlays proper take profit and stop loss regions for you. That's where you enhance and extract the most out of your trades, guys. So that's what makes this more powerful. So check that out. Bloodalytics.com. Link is in the description below. We got about 5 minutes before we kick this conference off. You got all these people. I mean, they are just going in on this damn thing, man. BB's left-handed. Actually, would you pick a hot cup of coffee up from a less dominant hand? Yeah, I would. Matter of fact, well, I'm kind of weird, but I actually drink with my left hand. I don't typically drink with my right hand. And I'm right-handed. And I wear my watches on my right hand, which is typically a left-handed person's move. So I'm a little quirky and weird on that one. So I don't know. Do you guys, would you pick up a cup of hot coffee with your less dominant hand? Hit the like button, ladies and gents. We got about 4 minutes before we kick off this. The AI me would. There it is. I found it, ladies and gentlemen. There it is, baby. Yo, this is the funniest one ever. Oh, God. Yo, this is out of control. Oh my God, bro. This shit is. Yo, I can sit up here and watch this like 100 times, bro. This nigga flipped the wait a minute. Did the coffee go from the left? Okay, put the 5 up. He jumps on the counter. And look, only one leg lands on the counter. That's some crazy skill right there, bro. That's diabolical. So he jumps up. The coffee stays, just miraculously stays in the cup. Man, he needs to be in the Olympics right now. He jumps up on the counter, does a full look at the coffee. Oh my, and he lands it a 10, ladies and gentlemen, a 10. Where's my 10 card? I need my 10. Bro, you get a 20 for that one, BB. You get a 20 for that one, Home Skillet. That is diabolical. Oh my God, he lands it perfectly, gentlemen. All right, enough of that. Let's get to the serious stuff, right? Let's take a look at let's take a look at this here news conference. I'll be back, Jack.
Where people are actually investing their money. That tells you the markets either have it pretty right or pretty wrong.
Well, Tom, we had, prior to the war, we had this big capital rotation that was taking place. You had a shift into small caps, the S&P 500, equal weight, international. Those were all areas that were doing very well. And I think a lot of that had to do with the growth backdrop we saw and the idea that we were going to get Fed cuts in the back half of this year. Now, a lot of those have been priced out. That trade has been put on hold. We need those cuts to be priced back in to see that trade start working again.
Do you think that's true, that they're there? that one for one?
Was
Because
predicated,
that's exactly
and edges down thereafter. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index and other data indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.8% over the 12 months ending in February, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.0%. These elevated readings largely reflect inflation in the goods sector, which has been boosted by the effects of tariffs. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have risen in recent weeks, likely reflecting the substantial rise in oil prices caused by the supply disruptions in the Middle East. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. The median projection in the SEP for total PCE inflation this year is 2.7% and 2.2% next year, a bit higher than projected in December. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5% to 3.75%. From last September through December, we lowered our policy rate 0.75 percentage point, bringing it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral. This normalization of our policy stance should continue to help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2%. But the implications of events in the Middle East for the U.S. economy are uncertain. In the near term, higher energy prices will push up overall inflation, but it is too soon to know the scope and duration of the potential effects on the economy. We will continue to monitor the risks to both sides of our mandate. We are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path of the federal funds rate under what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario for the economy. The median participant projects that the appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 3.4% at the end of this year and 3.1% at the end of next year, unchanged from December. As is always the case, these individual forecasts are subject to uncertainty, and they are not a committee plan or decision. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we'll make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned two goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We at the Fed will continue to do our jobs with objectivity, integrity, and a deep commitment to serve the American people. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Colby Smith of the New York Times. There's been some debate about whether the Fed should look through the inflation that will come from higher oil prices stemming from the Middle East conflict. Is that the right approach at this juncture? And to what extent does the fact that inflation has been above target for roughly 5 years now influence the committee's thinking around this?
So, first, let me say we're well aware of the performance of inflation over the last few years and how a series of shocks have interrupted progress that we've made over time. And that happened most recently with tariffs, and now there will be some effects on inflation coming forward. The thing that's really important that we see this year is progress on inflation through a reduction in goods inflation as the one-time effects on prices of tariffs go through the system, go through the to sort of understand that we actually are making progress, because on net we didn't make progress. And if you look at total core inflation, it's about 3%, and some big chunk of that, between 1/2 and 3/4, is actually tariffs. So we're looking for progress on that. The question of whether we look through the energy inflation doesn't really arise until we have kind of checked that box. It, of course, is kind of standard learning that you look through energy shocks, but that's always been dependent on inflation expectations remaining well anchored. And I think now it's also dependent on what you mentioned, which is that broader context of 5 years now of inflation above target. We have to keep all of those things in mind, and the question of looking through when it does rise will be one to approach not lightly, but in the context that you mentioned.
And just on the S&P, can you help us make sense of why there is still a bias to cut for most officials this year, despite the upward revision to headline and core inflation and the essentially unchanged forecast for growth and unemployment? Just curious, kind of what's the genesis behind the need, what's the need for the cut?
Yeah, so, there are 19 people, and so 19 reasons, 19 individual submissions, and if you notice, the median didn't change, but there was actually some movement toward, a meaningful amount of movement toward fewer cuts by people. So 4 or 5 people went from 2 to 1, let's say, 2 cuts to 1 cut. And each person has individual, stories behind what they want to do. But essentially it is that, the forecast is that we'll be making progress on inflation. Not as much as we had hoped, but some progress on inflation. It should come as we start to see in the middle of the year progress on tariffs, going through once and then tariff inflation coming down. And we should be seeing that. And the rate forecast is conditional on the performance of the economy. So if we don't see that,
speed is doing. We're gonna restart here. We got some slow motion going on.
Thank you, Howard Schneider with Reuters. Just to follow up a little bit in here for 2026, solely the result of the oil shock or something else?
So that's going to be part of it. But, that wouldn't be most of core, right? So the oil shock for sure shows up here. Some of that will be in core as well. But yes, but no, there's also just the
yeah, I'm trying to find another string out, guys.
That we haven't seen, the progress that we had hoped for on core goods and on tariffs and on the rest of it. So for whatever, it's so unclear what the direction from this particular end will be. Meanwhile, the growth has been solid, and inflation, the overshoot is mainly from the goods and tariffs. And,
there we go,
the labor
there
market,
we go, there we go.
Is the unemployment rate, of course, is little changed since September. You have a very, very low break-even rate.
No, it wasn't me. It
was
that feed.
Little growth in either demand or supply, but the U.S. economy is doing, pretty well. It's just we don't know what the effects of this will be, and really no one does.
Am I on sync now, guys?
Mr. Chair, in the past, the staff has suggested that higher oil prices, they have a hit to consumption, which Howard was talking about, but that's somewhat offset by increases to domestic production. I wonder if you could talk about that dynamic, especially to the extent that how much U.S. production is happening right now.
So the first thing is there is, the original thinking, the long-standing thinking, put it that way, is that you do look through energy shocks. But as I mentioned, that's conditioned on inflation expectations and that kind of thing. So, your question was?
What the staff is saying about, and has said in the past.
Yeah. So there'll be an offset.
Offsets, yeah.
So that's true. We have of energy, right? So any effects on employment and economic activity and spending would be offset to some extent by the fact that our oil companies will be more profitable and they may even do more drilling. If you ask oil companies about doing more drilling, though, they're going to want to see, a consistent rise in oil prices from where they were before the buildup for the war, and they're going to want to believe that that's going to be persistent for a fairly long time. So they're not sitting there waiting for oil to go over $70 a barrel, and then they're going to start drilling or whatever. They're going to make a reasoned careful judgment that we're going to have higher oil prices for an extended period of time, meaningfully higher. So I wouldn't say there's much of that happening, not much of it happening now, but some of that could happen over time if you see that. But so the net of the oil shock will still be some downward pressure on spending and employment and upward pressure on inflation, of course.
And if I could just follow up on Colby's question, how much do you worry that having looked through tariff inflation and inflation running above target and looking through the oil price shock would undermine the credibility of your commitment to the 2% target?
We have to do our analysis and think these things through carefully, but of course that's on everyone's mind. We're well aware of the history, but you don't want to overreact to that. You want to make the best judgment you can based on the facts. I don't think we're going to let it color our decision making more than is appropriate. It's more the thought that it's been 5 years, and we've actually had, we had the tariff shock, we had the pandemic, and now we have an energy shock of some size and duration. We don't know what that's going to be, actually. And, it's one of those things where it's a repeated set of things, and you worry that that's the kind of thing that can cause trouble for inflation expectations. And so we worry a lot about that, and we are very strongly committed to doing what it takes to keep inflation expectations anchored at 2%. And I think it's important that we do that. Very important.
Nick.
Nick Timmeros, Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, you've described monetary policy as modestly restrictive. If the unemployment rate is roughly stable, inflation moving sideways in the high twos, with an ongoing overshoot in services and non-housing services, not just goods, and the economy doing fairly well, as you just outlined, what gives you confidence that inflation returns to target over the next couple of years?
Okay. So I would say the rate is, you can characterize it as in the high end of neutral, or you can characterize it as perhaps mildly restrictive, even modestly restrictive. No one knows for sure, but it's in that range where it's somewhere around the borderline between restrictive and not. Remember that a big part of the disinflation we're looking for is just the runoff of when tariffs are put into place. Of course, what they do is they raise prices to some extent, to the extent those prices the tariffs are paid by consumers on a one-time basis. And we're waiting for that process. It takes 8, 9, 10, 11 months, a year to go through the system. And we're waiting for the tariffs, which were put in place over the course of the middle part and later last year. We're waiting for that to go through the system so that goods inflation will return closer to what it's always been. I mean, it used to be, for many, many years, it was negative. And then, the year before tariffs came in, it was 0. And it's running at like 2% now. So, and so that's kind of, goods inflation is running at 2%. So that's not coming from standard Phillips curve restrictive, restrictive policy. It's coming from the runoff of a one-time thing. We also think it's important, though, to keep policy either mildly restrictive or close to that, but not too restrictive because of the weakness in the downside risk. We are balancing these two goals, a situation where the risks to the labor market are to the downside, which would call for lower rates, and the risks to inflation are to the upside, which would call for higher rates, or not cutting anyway. So we're in a difficult situation, and we feel like our framework calls on us to balance the risks, and we feel like where we are now, which is kind of on that borderline, the higher borderline of restrictive versus not restrictive, we feel like that's the right place to be.
Can I ask about core non-housing services, though? Because there's some people who think that it hasn't come down very much, if at all, over the past year. If wage growth has come down, if the labor market has loosened, why has non-housing services inflation maybe been slower to follow?
That's a good question. It's frustrating. Non-housing services they basically moved sideways for a year. They're at the same level. And we do expect that they will come down, but it's a bunch of idiosyncratic things. But at the same time, that is one of the things we should be seeing, because to your point, the labor market is clearly not a source of inflationary pressures, and that should really matter for non-housing services. But we're not seeing progress there. So what we expect for next year is continued, what we want to see for this year rather, is continued progress on housing services, finally seeing that, the goods inflation come back down because the one-time effects of tariffs are through, and then also get some help from non-housing services. That's what we'd like to see. But it's a good question why we didn't see much of that last year.
Edward.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. So in December, we saw employment numbers revised down to negative 17,000. January revised down. February posted a loss of 92,000. Is the employment side a far greater risk than the inflation side? Because we are seeing inflation, CPI is close to 2%. PCE has ticked down overall.
It's really, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that that's clear at all, that one is more at risk than the other. So you can point to the unemployment rate being stable, and, in a world where both supply and demand for workers have come down very, very sharply over the course of the past year due to immigration policy largely, a ratio is going to be a better thing to look at than job creation, for example. So, and the ratio is the unemployment rate, and it's been stable since September. So that tells you that. Inflation, you can. We're at 3.0% core inflation, 2.8% headline. So we've been well above the 2%, that amount, whatever it is, 0.7, 0.8, or a full percentage point above 2% for some time. And that's a concern. We need to get back down to 2%. And we need to keep focused on that, even though we do now face some new inflation from energy. So I'd be hard-pressed to say that one of them is obviously more at risk than the other.
And if I may, what happens if there's no Federal Reserve chairman confirmed on May 15th? Would you stay on?
So if my successor is not confirmed by the end of my term as chair, I would serve as chair pro tem until he is confirmed. That is what the law calls for. That's what we've done on several occasions, including involving me, and it's what we're going to do in this situation. And while I'm at it, on the question of whether I will leave while the investigation is ongoing, I have no intention of leaving the board until the investigation is well and truly over, with transparency and finality. And I would refer you to the statement that was in the Fed's brief that you all have seen, and I won't have anything more for you on that. On the question of whether I will then continue to serve as a governor after my term ends and after the investigation is over, I have not made that decision yet. And I will make that decision based on what I think is best for the institution and for the people we serve. Figuring you probably were going to set the dominoes off there, Edward. And I'm not going to have any more to say on those issues, by the way.
Thank you very much. Claire Jones from the Financial Times. People have drawn quite a few historical parallels with the current situation. We've seen oil price shocks in the past. Some people have said the first Gulf War and the Fed's response to that, where there was a focus on the growth risks, is the right parallel. To what extent would you agree with that, and to what extent do you think we're in a different place today? Thank you.
It's really hard to say until we see the situation, the actual situation. In some circumstances, that might be the right case. In fact, for example, if we do see the kinds of disinflationary progress that we expect to see due to tariffs that I mentioned, I think it's hard to say, and it will depend to some extent on the size and duration of the effects we're seeing on prices, and it will depend a lot on what we can see in inflation expectations.
And just one follow-up, if I may, just on the BLS report that was mentioned briefly there. It doesn't seem from the projections or from the comments you've made today about the unemployment rate and focusing on that your view on the labour market story, to a large part being a supply-side story, has changed despite the quite negative number in February. Would that be the right take, and was there anyone else in the room who thought differently, and that the February jobs report was cause for concern?
So I think you have to take the two together. In a way, the January report was a positive surprise, and the February report was a negative surprise. If you put them together, you get something in the middle, and I think you have to really, as you do, I'm sure, realize there was a strike and there was weather, and that's about 80,000 of the negative effect total on the February report. Notwithstanding that, so what do you see if you take a step back overall? There are a number of indicators that suggest a degree of stability, but the thing that I think good number of people on the committee are concerned about is just the very, very low level of job creation. If you adjust what has been the trend job creation over the past, let's say, 6 months, if you adjust that for what we think, our staff thinks, is the overstatement due to overcounting, effectively there's zero net job creation in the private sector. But actually that looks like that's about what the economy needs in terms of dealing with very, very low, non-existent really growth in the labor force, which of course we've never had in our history. So you've got a sort of a zero employment growth equilibrium. Now that's balance, okay, but you know, I would say it does have a feel of downside risk, and it's not kind of a real balance. So you know, we look at that, we see it, we get it, and I mean everybody understands the arithmetic, and that's you can say the break even is zero, but nonetheless it's something we're watching carefully, and so and you know, are concerned about. But ultimately, though, you can argue that it's a consequence of deliberate policy, which is really the changes to immigration. That's the biggest factor there, and but nonetheless something we watch carefully.
Andrew.
Powell, the economy's experienced a series of supply shocks in the last few years, COVID, tariffs, 2 oil price shocks. Do you think that is bad luck, or has something changed in the world that makes supply shocks more common, and does the central bank need to start taking account of the risk of supply shocks as a more common problem?
You know, we did go through a long period where the shocks were all demand shocks, and you know, so we've had a lot of practice thinking about supply shocks in the last 4 or 5 years for sure. And it's just a very different thing, and a very much more difficult thing, because it does immediately raise the question of tension between the two parts of our mandate. But you know, has the world changed? I mean, COVID is a one-time thing, right? This energy supply shock is a one-time thing. It's not because of some broad tendency or anything, I don't think. And you know, the oil shock with Ukraine was also a consequence of military action. So I don't know that the world has changed in a way that there'll be more supply shocks. But you know, there's people have written that paper and that speech a number of times. A number of people have tried to make the case that is the case. And in fact, we have seen more supply shocks in the last 5 years than we've seen in many years before that. It's a fact.
Okay. You said last year that the Fed was reviewing its communication strategies, including the SEP, as part of its framework review. Whatever happened to that? And I have like 5 follow-ups to that, but yeah, I guess
5.
What
Man, you don't get off that damn mic.
if you had the time. Thanks.
What happened about that was not much, and I'll tell you why. So, you know, we looked carefully at many aspects of the SEP and of our communications, and there weren't any ideas that had very broad support on the committee. And you don't want to make a change to your communications unless you have the committee behind that. So we didn't really make any changes on that. I had hoped that they had some things that I wanted to do, but they didn't attract broad support, and we'd already made all the changes we made to the framework. That was a critical thing. So we didn't. And, I wish we had been able to do some things, but we didn't. So maybe the next chair will take a look. I'm sure he will.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. The minutes show in January some members of the committee wanted to include a two-sided guidance on policy. Was that discussed today? And given the rise in the inflation expectations, how much support for a two-sided policy warning would there be?
So it did come up today. The policy that the possibility rather that our next move might be an increase did come up at the meeting, as it did at the last meeting. The vast majority of participants don't see that as their base case, and of course we don't take things off the table. But you correctly characterized, what was in that's indicated, and something very much like that conversation did happen. What was your second question?
I was just one question there, but follow-up would be. There are a lot of goods besides oil that are trapped in the Strait right now, and a lot of supply chains getting snarled. How much concern do you have about whether if this becomes an inflation problem beyond just oil, whether there's anything you can do about it or would do about it, given the efficacies of monetary policy.
You know, you can worry about other commodities. You can worry about all of the ways that oil-related commodities go into manufacturing and that kind of thing. The truth is, it's completely out of our hands, and we just, like everybody else, we have to just wait and see what happens, and it'll come down to how long, you know, the current situation lasts, and then what are the effects on prices, and then how do consumers react and that kind of thing. Really, I wouldn't speculate in any way, and there's really not a lot we can do other than kind of watch and see.
Maria Luisa.
Afternoon, Chair Powell. Maria Luisa Capurro with Bloomberg News. I wanted to ask you, you've said longer-term measures of inflation expectations reflect confidence that the Fed will get back to its 2% goal, but there are some colleagues of yours who have pointed to higher dispersion in household service, in business services as well. So, and that they take as a signal that inflation expectations may be less sticky than in the past. I'm wondering if there was a discussion around that at this meeting across the committee, and what were the views of what is the state of inflation expectations and the risks from higher oil and gas prices.
So at this meeting, I mean, a number of people mentioned and staff briefed on short-term expectations having moved up quite a lot for reasons we understand well. But long-term expectations, you know, you can always find one that's troubling or some aspect of one that's troubling, but ultimately, right through this whole period, the overwhelming majority of the things we look to, including markets, including surveys of, you know, of the public and also of forecasters, they've all been pretty solid on longer-term inflation expectations being right where they need to be, consistent with 2%. So that continues to be the case. We didn't have a lot of conversation about that. I think everyone does agree that you know, we'll be watching those extremely carefully as we see the effects of the price increases come through from the conflict.
And still on how the discussion went across the committee, before coming to this meeting, there were some members who were like discussing the risks of a slowdown in growth and at a time of where inflation remains high. It really doesn't seem that most members are penciling in a slowdown in growth.
No.
But has there been any discussion of the risks of stagflation at this point?
So people actually wrote up their growth forecast by a tenth, and I think that's probably to do with just growing confidence in productivity. But sorry, and your second question was just.
If there have been any discussions about the risk of stagflation scenario.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there is tension between the two goals, right? The upward risk for inflation and downward risk for employment. So, and that puts us in a different situation. You know, when we use the term stagflation, I always have to point out that was a 1970s term at a time when unemployment was in double figures and inflation was really high and the misery index was super high. Add them together, you get the misery index. And that's not the case right now. We actually have unemployment really close to longer run normal, and we have inflation that's, you know, 1 percentage point above that. So calling that stagflation, it's not, you know, I would reserve the term stagflation for, you know, a much more serious set of circumstances. That is not the situation we're in. What we have is some tension between the goals, and we're trying to manage our way through it. It's a very difficult situation, but it's nothing like what they faced in the 1970s, and that's, I reserve stagflation for that, the word for that period. Maybe that's just me.
Elizabeth.
Thanks so much. Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. President Trump says that oil prices and overall inflation will go down very rapidly as soon as the war ends. Do you agree with that?
I don't have a forecast on that.
When we're thinking about the impact on American households, as you know, they've been facing these higher prices for years. They've seen an almost $1 increase in gas. How worried are you about households, especially lower income families, being able to afford those price hikes? And should people be bracing for higher costs, including for food now?
We don't know how big these effects are going to be, and I don't want to characterize them in any way. Of course, people are already seeing gas prices. Gas prices are up almost $1 a gallon. We hope that isn't for a long period of time, and of course people will feel that, but I don't want to speculate about what that might mean, because honestly that would sound like I have some idea of what's actually going to happen, and I don't think anybody really does. We're going to see how this works out, and I just would leave it at that.
Victoria. Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. I just wanted to ask, for purposes of the next meeting, how the Middle East war develops between now and then, how are you thinking about what might guide action at your next meeting? I mean, if we have oil prices, above $100 a barrel the entire time until the next meeting, is that going to change your wait and see stance? Like, what would lead you all to move, or is are you on hold pretty indefinitely?
We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we always say we're going to learn more by the next meeting, and usually we do, but in this case we're going to learn a lot, because we're going to learn 6 weeks to the day till the next meeting, and we're going to see whether what happens is it's going to be very important for the way the economy looks and the way the outlook evolves with what happens in the Middle East. That's going to be a big factor, and we'll know that then. I don't know how it's going to affect our thinking. I really don't. And we did talk about alternative scenarios a little bit, but it's just, I wouldn't bring that in here. It's very uncertain, and I just want to remember that we don't know, and we shouldn't assume it's going to be one thing or another. We're going to see.
So is it a matter of you don't know how the situation itself is going to evolve, or even if things remain as they are, the economy could still remain relatively durable in face of them?
Yeah, that's true too. No, I mean, the U.S. economy has just, made it's been strong through a whole bunch of challenges. I mean, if you go back to 2023, when we raised rates a lot in 22 and 23, and close to 100% of economists called for a recession, which didn't happen. In fact, 2023 was a really strong year. So the U.S. economy has really been just doing pretty well through a lot of significant challenges over the past few years. It's been amazing to see. And I don't know what's going to happen in the next intermeeting cycle, and I don't know what's going to happen in the Middle East. I wouldn't want to speculate.
Hi, Chair Powell. Thanks for taking our questions. What makes you so certain that tariff-related price increases will be a one-time effect? I don't think we've seen you since the Supreme Court tariff decision.
We got an Ebony holding the mic.
None of us know
got
what
an
the extent of the tariff shock will be as the administration moves to replace some of the tariffs that were overturned. So I suppose I'm curious, what would make you question this certainty that tariffs are going to be a one-time price effect?
Well, I would not at all use the word certain about my views on that. I'm not certain. I'm uncertain. But just if you think about what it is, it's a one-time increase in the price of a good, right? And what inflation is ongoing increases in prices this year, next year, the year after. That's what inflation is. It's not a one-time price increase. There's a very, very big difference. The public doesn't really focus on that, but that's the difference. And tariffs should be in theory, unless they cause people to start expecting still more tariffs the next year and still more tariffs the next year. They should be a classic one-time thing. People say the same thing traditionally about an energy price spike, because traditionally prices go up and they come back down. And by the time monetary policy would react, it would be over. So I don't have tons of confidence on that. I think that the theory is probably right, but as usual, the time it takes to get all the way through the economy is just very uncertain. And we found that coming out of COVID, that the inflation did go away, and largely for the reasons we thought it would, but it took 2 years longer than we thought. So I think we have to be humble about knowing how long it will take for tariffs to go all the way through the economy. And so what we've been doing is our staff's been doing. It's very interesting. They started off with just an estimate because there wasn't a real history, and then they've built based on the history that they're seeing of tariffs coming through into prices. They can now have an arc And for all the tariffs, they can say, well, so we have, I think, a slightly more confidence that we will see tariff inflation coming down, not prices, but you won't see further increases. And we should start seeing that more and more in the middle parts of the year. We do expect that. Now, you're also right, though, that the level of tariffs came down fairly meaningfully in the wake of the court decision. But the administration said they're going to get that rate right back up to where it was. So, and we assume that they'll do that over time. So that's how we think about it.
Thank you.
Chris Rugaber.
Hi, thank you. Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. You talked about the shortcomings of the SEP in this environment. I wanted to ask about, or throw in an additional thing, which is the fact that it's happening before transition. Is there still some value, perhaps, in the public knowing what other Fed officials are thinking, the ones who will stay on for the rest of the year and beyond? And does that even handicap your successor in any way? Well, just in terms of having a whole committee expressing its views, is that something that locks them in for the rest of the year?
No. We never. The SEP is never. People are more than happy to change their SEP dots. They're no way bound by them. It's your opinion at a moment in time, which can change based on events. Sometimes very quickly. So it never locks people in. People are more than happy to be proven wrong in either direction. And so I just think we do it. And I mentioned this was a time when it's very hard to do it. During the pandemic, we actually took one meeting off, I think. But we don't like to do that just because it's hard to do. We should just keep doing it. But I just would say for this one, though, I think it's even more than usual good to take the forecast with a grain of salt, because subject to just very high levels of uncertainty.
Brian.
Hi, Chair Powell. Brian Chung with NBC News. So you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that you're well aware of the history of inflation running above target. It seems like that might be what's underpinning the affordability problem that we're hearing a lot about on Main Street. Are there any signs to you that that's impacting the psychology of the consumer, especially given that they're a big driver of overall economic activity?
I'm not sure what that's all about, but I'll tell you what I think and what we see in surveys, and that is, there were big price increases all around the world, by the way, everywhere in countries like the United States had basically the same kind of thing. It was a global inflation coming out of the pandemic. And everywhere people are feeling like real wages have been going up in the United States now for 3 years, roughly. But people are not feeling good about it yet. And it will take some years of positive real earning gains for people to feel good again, we think. But you're right. But when you talk to people, they do feel squeezed. And there are areas where prices are still going up, like insurance. Various different kinds of insurance are getting more and more expensive, and that's just catching up really from inflationary pressures that take a while to get to into the price. So we take it very seriously. We don't dismiss it at all. It's a very real thing from the standpoint of what people are experiencing, and what it does for us is, makes us even more committed, if that's possible, to getting inflation back to 2% on a sustained basis.
How does the Fed's independence play into the ability to address affordability?
Well, independence is what allows us to do our jobs, and stable prices is half of our mandate. It's one of our two mandates, maximum employment being the other. I mean, look at every advanced economy that looks anything like the United States, anywhere in the world, in a market economy, in a democracy, and you'll see, pretty much central bank independence that looks a lot like, in some cases, stronger than what we have. But it's critical that we have that so that we can do the things when we need to do them to preserve price stability. And it's an accepted standard practice, and I think has a lot of support, certainly in Congress, which is where our oversight is in Congress. And you see that among Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate.
Richard.
Hi, Chair Powell. Richard Escobedo at CBS News. Thanks for doing this.
Two questions. One, how high would oil prices and broader inflation have to go, and for how long, for the committee to consider hiking rates? And then secondly, diesel prices are rising faster than gas prices. How concerned are you that the increase in diesel might drive up food and goods prices and lead to broader inflation?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you an example or specific answer on the first question. You know, we're prepared to do what needs to be done, but I wouldn't want to hypothesize about what that might be. You know, in terms of diesel prices, so your question there is, are we concerned about it? I mean,
how concerned, and whether or not it will drive up, you know, the cost of food and other goods that really rely on it to.
So I think it's a more general concern than that. It's diesel prices because that's transportation of food and things like that. There are just lots of ways that oil and derivatives of oil get into the production and transportation of many things. So, and those, there are big effects in headline inflation, but things like that leak into core as well. And the effects may not be as big, but they're quite real and they're material. So we are aware of that and we're watching it, but you know, we're right at the beginning of this, and we don't know how big we just don't know how big this will be and how long it lasts. You know, it may or may not be something that really makes a big imprint on the U.S. economy. We're just going to have to wait and see.
Thank you.
Archie, for the last question.
Thanks very much. Just to sort of stare into the future for a little bit, I was looking at the longer run bits of the SEP and noticed that the growth estimate had been revised up a good chunk from 1.8 to 2, and the kind of long-term Fed funds rate as well. It'd be great just to hear, is that AI productivity or what's going on there exactly?
Yeah, I think it's just productivity. You know, we actually started seeing meaningfully higher productivity some years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and that's not because of, you know, generative AI. We won't know for years what it's really due to, but it could be due to the kind of things that people did during the pandemic to economize and somehow become more productive because there was an incredible labor shortage. But I think economic forecasters are very skeptical of periods of high productivity because they're so rare and they're often revised away. And for many of us, I never thought I'd see this many years of really high productivity, and by the way, expect it to continue. And we haven't really started to see the effects of generative AI, and that should certainly contribute to that. So it's quite unusual, and it's this is the higher productivity is the thing that allows incomes to rise over time. And so it's a great thing. Was that your question?
Yeah, no, I was just curious what lay behind that. And just briefly on that as well to finish up, you hear the argument a lot, this is a sort of disinflationary story, and if you believe that productivity thing, that should also weigh down inflation over time, maybe then kind of pull down where rates end up. Do you kind of agree with that line of thinking, or do you think that's not how you should think about where the rates?
I think you have to be cautious about that, in particular if you're talking about AI, about generative AI. So remember, in the short term, what's happening is we're building data centers everywhere, and that's actually putting pressure on all kinds of goods and services that go into building these things. So that's actually probably pushing inflation up at the margin. In addition, it probably raises the neutral rate. So in the near term, you're not looking at something that would immediately call for lower rates or that would be lowering inflation. Over time, though, sure, it can be if it's expanding potential output, which is what higher productivity does, then it actually can be. But I think it's an empirical question because it's really what is the demand growing faster or slower than the supply side, and I think we just don't know that answer ex ante going in. We'll just have to wait and see. Thank you very much.
Blowing the closing bell. That was
there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another nothing burger from Mr. Jerome Powell. Round of applause. Dow dropped. It's down 600. Dropped another 200 when at the end of Jerome Powell's talk. I'm gonna have to say one thing about this talk, man, that stood out to me, and it was very early in the actual speech. He made mention of hey, I may be around for a long time. I'm definitely going to be around until this subpoena investigation is complete. Well, that could be years. So, I don't know. He's going to have a lot of impact on decision making regarding rate cuts. So I don't know if that was why the markets dropped further. Bitcoin didn't really move that much on the news. It's been hovering around that critical trend line that I drew while we were watching Jerome Powell speaking. I drew this up, and I'm going to go ahead and save this chart now, so we have that locked in. But we got to watch this line here. So we typically will get some type of move post-FOMC, same day even. Let's see what happens. Do we get a move back up? Do we get a move continuation downward? We're right there at that critical technical level, so it's game time. We got to know, we're gonna find out soon, because we're not gonna just trend sideways into tomorrow's session. We're not gonna do that, because then that would take us, well, I guess we technically could Thursday. Yeah, we could kind of trend sideways right at the trend line until tomorrow's opening. We'll see. But we're gonna have to make listen. By Friday, you will know. You will know. By Friday, you will know if my hunch was right not to buy, and we crash down and we hit the top side of that trend line right there above my chair. This seems to be the target for me. And then maybe we get a bounce. But taking us down to $76,000 Bitcoin. We got quadruple witching Friday. Thank you for that, Hyben. Definitely forgot about that. Big Dog said we're going up. Powell saying staying in there like a bed sore. Correct. Correct. No cut, man. We stayed the same. We stayed unchanged. All right, that's it for today, ladies and gents. Thank you for tuning in. You got a couple free trades there during the live stream, second live stream, Bloodalytics. You already know we doing it every day, live. Check it out, bloodalytics.com. We got the Moonalytics for the woo-woo traders. We got the Scalpalytics for the scalpers that want the fast money, selling those red tops. And of course, don't forget the new service. If you already got a system that you use on TradingView, you can have it agentically optimized. We got a new service allowing us to really hone in on those parameters, man. Find the most profitable parameters out of tens of thousands of permutations. Very powerful service. Check it out, bloodalytics.com, and just click the agentic optimization tab. All right, Steve Hickey, some glove love. Appreciate it, my friend. Hope everyone has a beautiful rest of the day. And we're gonna leave on, you know what we're gonna leave on. We're gonna leave on that flip gate, baby. We gotta leave on the flip gate. We gotta leave on the flip gate, ladies and gentlemen. Let's watch it one more time. Let's watch it one more time. Oh! Oh, let's watch it again. Let's do a slow-mo. Let's do a slow-mo for him real quick. High and by. Look at that. Oh, BB, you got some athleticism at that old tender age of 80-something years old. What in the world? Man. And didn't drop a dime. I'm out of here, people. Holla.
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Okay. Ready?
Fucking thing sucks. We'll do it live.
Okay.